Hi, I'm May, and this is my very first walkthrough video. It is of my dog Annie in pastels. I used pastel mat for the paper, pan pastels for the underpainting and background, and pit pastel. That's my bird George in the background. And I used pit pastel pencils for the majority of the piece. So I hope that I get better with these in the future. I plan to be putting them out on walkthrough Wednesdays. So please let me know what you think and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thank you. Hi, so here it is. The drawing has already been transferred to the pastel mat, and I just go right in to start with some pan pastel color with my soft tools to start filling out where everything is, where the form generally is, or how it is shaped, and where the shadows and highlights are going to be. There is no detail at this point, or very little detail. I am just trying to fill those areas with the same general color that is the base of the drawing, and it's going to be, this is the best part. This is the most fun part, actually, because you don't have to worry about all the details yet. When I use a pencil at this stage of the game, I'm really just kind of defining where the major things are so I don't lose them, like the nose and where the mouth is and the eyes. And then I just keep going back and forth with that in my pan pastels to keep adding where the form is, the shadows, the highlights. I'm looking from a bigger perspective right now to kind of see where my light hits and just kind of get the whole image mapped out before I go in with all the details and fun stuff and extra colors. And you can see now I'm using some yellows. It's hard to see yellows and blues and all that in the photo, but I'm still going to use them because it kind of brings the artwork to life. And you kind of have to look hard, you train your eye to see where those colors are in the photo and then bring them out more in the artwork. Otherwise it looks kind of flat. And then here I am just kind of putting all of my dark details in a broad sense. I'm not going too fine yet. And then I'm still using my spongy soft tools to go and blend that out. And I can just blend and blend and blend. It doesn't really matter at this point if details get blended out because it actually adds more depth. The more details you add on top of soft details, it just looks more realistic. So it's about layering, and in this piece, I obviously went all around the piece, working not section by section, but some people like to work section by section and just get them all done. And I'm starting to use that technique, but in this piece, it was just wherever I felt I wanted to fill in and work, that's where I worked. So I'm still mapping out the form, but I'm going in with more pencils for more detail. It's really important at this stage to get in all the fur direction the right way, and then keep in mind that the fur is sitting on top of a form. So you're not just going to be shading the fur, it's all about the form underneath the fur. The texture should be last. So she doesn't have long fur, so it's pretty easy. I just kind of stick to the form, stick close to the body, and then little hair marks and stuff like that. Just make sure that your pencils are going in the direction of the fur, your pencil strokes, going in the direction of the fur where it's going in the photo. And you're using midtones to kind of map that out. Midtones being in that area, it's not the highlights or the shadows. And then you can go in and kind of further define if they're dark shadows or if it's a lighter area. So I'm going in with a lot of midtones right now, different browns, some grays. I am using a little bit of blue, bluish grays, because I did see that in my photograph and I liked it. Gotta make sure your pencils are nice and sharp for this, especially with fur and eyes and all of that. And pastel pencils can be difficult to sharpen. So I just use a utility knife. A lot of people use knives because sharpeners, like normal colored pencil sharpeners, will just break them because they're thick. They're a weird texture, chalky kind of lead. So I use a knife. Going in with more midtones up here, but keeping in mind the form. for example, on the shiny part of the head there, I am not putting the same tones in the fur that I am for the darker areas of the head. I'm maintaining those highlights by using lighter midtones like my yellows and orangey browns to texturize those areas. And then in the really light areas, I have even less midtones, and they're mostly cream colors. I want to reserve my whites for they're the brightest parts on the chest. Not the whole chest, even though it's white. I'm saving it for the brightest parts of the chest and the brightest parts of the white and where it's really shiny. So there I am kind of filling out her tags, but I'll come to the tags later. I don't like to do the tags near the beginning because they kind of there's a lot of detail on them. And if I'm still working on the chest, then sometimes it'll smudge onto the foreground, onto the license. So, all right, going in with more white, more highlights for kind of mapping out where all my light areas are. It's not super detailed yet, but you can see it's kind of getting there. Using more yellows to kind of bridge the gap between my browns and my whites where it gets lighter. It's really a game of browns, blacks, yellows, whites, some cream, some grays, and then a little bit of blues. Sometimes a little bit of reds. You gotta pay attention to what temperature scheme you kind of want it to be. If you want it to be cooler, you use more blues. If you want it to be a warmer feel, you don't use blues or you use more reds. I've already gotten the shadow down under her feet, but I'm also going to add a background. So on her legs, I'm just adding where the fur direction goes and keeping that form in mind. I don't know if I explained this, but the glassine, the paper I'm using, it's called glassine, and it just comes as part of the pastel mat pads. It's like on the back of each one, and I use that just to make sure if my hand is resting on it, I'm not smudging my work. But otherwise, you can use your fingers on this as you work. You can smudge as you go. Just don't do that very much near the end, because then you'll smudge out your final details. And you'll see I use a little brush for that. So it's really a game of just developing form and then detail, form and then detail. And then adding extra colors in there as you go if you feel like it needs a little bit of something extra, especially in an area where there's a lot of midtone and it looks a little boring. You can add a midtone of another color that might help it pop a little bit more. Like a little bit of red if there's a lot of brown midtone. Going in and further detailing these areas, not using my sponge tools anymore, my soft tools. I'm just keeping in mind the direction of the fur, what the form is, where the light hits. And it's easy to go in and over texturize, but you want to remember the form underneath too. Here I am, I'm just using a pretty big sponge to start the background. I wanted to make it like a bubbly background. Bokeh is kind of what it's called. I don't know if I said that right. But you go in with just big soft tools of your choice, sponges, and kind of shape out circles in varying tones. And you don't want to complete them like complete circles with defined lines around them. It just has to look kind of like they're layered. So I layered them like with purple bubbles and dark pink bubbles in the background. And then as I blended those out, I bring them forward with some white or more detailed clear bubbles. I like these backgrounds a lot. I still made space for those shadows that I made under her feet and her tail. But I was also thinking in her eyes, she's got those big, bright white highlights in her big circular round eyes. So I kind of wanted the background to reflect that and bring out those shapes. And now I'm just going in with a soft tool and just laying in more of those white bubbles because I can define those a little bit more than the pink and purple ones in the back. There's not really a wrong way or a right way to do these backgrounds either. You kind of just need to make sure it doesn't take away too much from your subject. That's the biggest thing. It's easy to do. It's a little dark here, sorry. I hadn't gotten my easel light yet, which is basically just a desk light that I put over my easel. So it's a little dark, sorry about that. But I'm just going in and blending it out, putting more pinks in between the bubbles, and yeah, getting back to the dog for a little because I got tired of that. Still laying in more dark details in the fur where there's some shadows. Trying to leave alone the lighter parts. It's easy to get detail happy and start going in and over detailing things, and then you forget about the form. So keep that in mind. Also, my pressure with my hand is harder and firmer at this point. It's a lot lighter to start because I want to leave a lot of tooth in the paper for more details. But here I'm almost done with a lot of these details in the fur, so I can go in with the sharp points and kind of leave more of an impression if I want it to stay on top. But don't push too hard because you do want to keep that depth from underneath. Keep in mind here the white and the lightest cream pencils, all those highlights, you want to bring them out really mostly here at the end because they lay on top of the fur because they're highlights. So since I'm not smudging in anymore, now is the best time to lay them on top of my piece. And even the highlights have to be in the direction of the fur. I don't just smack them on there and there's a highlight. Nope, I still have to make them be in the direction of the fur for it to be realistic. So I'm thinking about a lot here. You also don't put the same level of highlight on a darker area as you do a brighter area unless it's wet, like her lip. I put a little bit of white on her black lip and it makes it look a little bit wet and shiny, and her nose. Started on her tags here. I just laid down some yellow and white, and then I further go in and refine that. I put a little bit of a yellow highlight on her metal tag from the Home Again tag, and it makes it look reflective. So when you're doing metal, that's really important, is see what it's reflecting off of, and that'll kind of bring it up another level, make it look more realistic. I'm going in and finishing up the background now, some finishing touches on that. And this part is almost as fun as the beginning because I'm really just putting in where I feel would be brightening it up. It's finishing touch time. It's bright whites, highlights, and darkest little blacks here and there. And when I feel like it's complete and it's totally done, I'm going to sign it, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope that you have a great day, and I hope this helped you in some way with your artwork. Thank you for watching. Bye.